Hello, everyone, and welcome. Good evening. This is Ramola D of Ramola D Reports, and I'm very happy to be here again this evening with Geral-Sosbee, FBI whistleblower, who was here on my podcast a little while ago. And people who listen to that podcast know that the audio on that was seriously sabotaged, and I'm hoping that that won't happen this time. Geral-Sosbee is a JD and an MA in English. He's worked as a college professor teaching law, teaching English, and he's worked also with the FBI. He was a special agent during the 70s, and he was in the US Army as well during the late 60s and early 70s in the Vietnam War. And unfortunately, Geral-Sosbee became targeted after he worked inside the FBI to speak out against the targeting of somebody else, during his tenure at the FBI. And unfortunately, he was targeted himself, and this followed him after he left the FBI. And we're kind of going to just continue the conversation we had the last time and probe a little deeper his own experience and his own views and understandings of what's going on in the country today. So welcome, Geral. I'm so glad you could join me this evening, and I do hope everything goes well today.
Yes, I do too. Thank you very much, Ramola, for all of your work. As I said last time during our first interview, you're pulling people together from all over the world to share their experiences, which are having to do with directed energy weaponry, stalking, harassment, terrorizing people. And my name is Geral-Sosbee, born 8/30/45. I entered the U.S. Army in 1966 until 68, and I entered the FBI from 71 to 78. My work in the FBI never included the kind of terrorist assaults that Ramola and I are studying. Anyone who wants to see what I did in the FBI can go to the FBI history book, which is on my website at sosbeevfbi.com, and a lot of other information is on that website. So I'm offering this information to the public through Ramola for educational purposes, and I'd like to say that it gives me no joy to report to the world that the FBI and the CIA, but mainly I'm concerned about the FBI because I know them. I don't know the CIA. Barbara Hartwell does, but I'm very sad to report that the FBI is the most evil terrorist organization, as far as I can see, on the face of the earth. They're using all kinds of advanced technological weaponry based in deep space. They're using psychological operations where they perform dirty tricks on people, like tearing up their cars. This is what they've done to me, coming into my home, watching me in my home, and then doing things in the home that would make me think that I'm losing contact. In other words, they're tearing up things in the home that I use occasionally. They watch me. Anyone who says that we're paranoid just doesn't understand what's going on. In order to understand it, a person would need to read much of the data that Ramola has presented and my information on my website, especially my story in detail. And in reference to the paranoia, see Part 20, a fraudulent report written by a medical doctor who is now a VA, a Veterans Administration doctor. He wrote a completely false report on me when I tried to explain to him that I was being hit with directed energy weaponry and extremely low frequency sound waves. Now, recently I have ischemic heart disease, and I have a problem with the veins. Forget the word. It's a heart disease that hits many people, but I believe it was exaggerated by the sleep deprivation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're trying to actually cause me to have a heart attack.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ramon.
And that is extremely horrific to hear, Geral. And I'm so sorry that you are being targeted in this fashion and being hit in this fashion. As many people are indeed reporting, these weapons are insidious. They are some of the worst weapons that have probably ever been invented, because they attack the human body at the level of health, at the level of the immune system, at the level of all of the body's systems, right? And the ways in which they are being used is also profoundly horrific. Because I think one of the things you're mentioning is sleep deprivation, right? And many people who are being targeted are reporting sleep deprivation, literally being woken up several times during the night. So they're literally unable to sleep, unable to go into deep REM sleep, the dream stage of sleep, which is supposed to be the healing stage of sleep.
Yes. Are you there?
Yes, I'm right here. So you are also experiencing a similar kind of sleep deprivation, right?
Oh, mine is very intense. For about 2 months ago, I was kept up every night, all night, for 2 weeks running, 2 weeks, with very little sleep the next day and no REM sleep, REM.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually collapsed walking through the mall. They wanted to take me to the hospital. I declined that. The hospitals are not a safe place for me to go. But yes,
Mm-hmm.
sleep deprivation I think, has exaggerated or induced part of my heart problems. Coronary artery disease is what I was trying to think of a minute ago. That's what I'm diagnosed with.
Mm-hmm.
So when they keep me awake all night, the heart suffers. I can feel the palpitations, I think they're called,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to put me in a hospital right now to do some things like put a stent in my heart. And I'm concerned that if they keep the sleep deprivation going, I will, in fact, collapse with a heart attack. There's no question about that. That's what the doctor tells me, that I'm a walking time bomb for a heart attack. But I don't want to go into the hospital unless I have to, because, as I said, the hospital is a very dangerous place for me. The FBI has assaulted me 2 or 3 times in the hospital, and I was in the hospital because they put me there with their assaults on me with chemicals and other things. So yes, sleep deprivation is a potentially deadly. I'm sure they're using a deadly tool, and I'm sure they're using this against other people, not just me. Ed Katz reported it. Do you know Ed Katz?
I've heard of him. I don't know him personally.
Yeah, he's from Russia, my understanding, and the FBI was hitting him, or the CIA, with sleep deprivation, and he looked absolutely horrible when I saw him. And he says they're also hitting his family, his wife and his children. I don't know why they would do that.
I'm so
But they're
sorry.
also hitting my wife. They hit my wife with it sometime because she's sleep deprived. So I asked the Congressman Vicente Gonzalez to send a message to the director of the FBI to stop torturing my wife. She's done nothing to the FBI. If they have to torture someone, just torture me. That's a fact, and I sent that in to Gonzalez, Mr. Gonzalez.
That's pretty amazing, Gerald, but let's just pause that word torture. Torture is illegal. It's illegal by international law, it's illegal by national law, it's illegal in America. You're not supposed to torture. Nobody's supposed to torture anybody. And yet we have all of these dark agencies and the military, running these weapons on people all around the country, literally exposing them to precisely the same kind of sleep deprivation. And by the way, Gerald, tons of people are reporting this. It's not just, you and Ed Katz. I'm being sleep deprived pretty much every single night. And this has been going on for 4 years. So I am also reporting pretty much the same kinds of things as you are. And there are other people, pretty much almost everybody I've spoken to who's targeted tells me they're being sleep deprived. And it's horrific. Sleep deprivation is an aspect of torture. So this is why I think we can clearly and openly say this is domestic torture being carried out within the continental United States of America, and who is it being carried out by? And I guess that's the $1 million question, right? And you, of course, are pointing to the FBI as being largely involved. So, but whether it's just the FBI alone or a bunch of other agencies, it's these agencies and the military groups that are doing non-consensual experimentation, and they really do not have any right to torture people.
That's right. You mentioned legality. This is the really sad part for me, because I was trained in the law and I was brought up believing in the Constitution of the United States, and I've always honored the law. And yet here I'm discovering that the FBI has they have contempt for the law. They do not recognize the Bill of Rights or any international human rights. The move to control the world under the New World Order, it's referred to as NWO, apparently removes all constraints on the FBI and CIA, constraints regarding law. So they disregard the laws. And incidentally here, Joseph Mengele of the Nazi Germany
Mm-hmm.
was about one of the most evil men who ever served in any government. And we've got many Mengelés right now in the FBI and probably in the CIA, psychopaths who torture people, who sit and watch them suffer. It's like if you're starving someone to death or making someone die of thirst, and you hold water right up to his lips, and then you take it away just before he can sip it. That's the kind of stuff Mengele was doing as he watched these people die, as he was torturing them. Well, the FBI is doing the same thing, but on a different scale, and different methods are being used. I can't emphasize enough how completely corrupt and evil are these FBI people and their operatives, and they're trained to do this, and they're paid. And one more thing. These federal judges who are authorizing, who are issuing these secret court orders for the FBI to go out and terrorize people, these judges, first of all, they have to be approved by the FBI. They owe their careers to the FBI. And they're paid close to $200,000 a year to sit there and be operatives on cue whenever the FBI wants them to be. So this is a disgrace, abomination that our judges have been turned into operatives for the FBI. And the Supreme Court, I'm sad to say, has disappointed everyone. They are allowing the FBI to get away with these things. And so we have public policy now. Public policy is an invisible law that affects everyone, and it means basically standard of operations that are accepted by everyone without question. Now, that's what public policy is. And so the FBI now seems to have a public policy that they can terrorize people and get away with it, go into your neighborhood, tell your neighbors lies about you to make everybody hate you and despise you. They can ruin your life, and that's what they're doing, Ramola.
And they're doing it under public policy, you say, rather than an actual law that permits them to do this.
Yeah, it's hard to explain how this works. I think Mark Twain said that outrageous conduct that's permitted for 1,000 years is law. I mean, that sounds weird, but in other words, if it's going on for like a long period of time, hundreds of years, then it becomes law. And it overrides all other laws. That's the kicker. Public policy overrides all other laws. And when the FBI gets this court order against someone, that court order is the law with respect to that particular target. The target can't say, oh, what about my constitutional rights? What about this, my right to confront my witnesses, the right to due process, equal? No, none of those apply, because the law is what the judge says it is with regard to any particular target.
I see.
And
so
that's a sad statement.
Right, and that's opportunity for abuse right there. And as you're kind of showing to all of us, that it's a kind of a setup that permits corruption and fraud, whereby the judges are kind of in the pocket of the FBI. They're there to do the FBI's bidding. They're paid thousands of dollars, and they do what they are told by the FBI. So you see the FBI as, in a sense, being, situated above these judges and kind of giving them instructions and kind of, setting the stage for fraud right there. Because even though they are operating like this is the law, they're essentially committing fraud by lying about people who are now named targets and, targets and subjects of investigation.
Yes, I'm trying to understand why they would do this to people. And the only conclusion I have is that the United States doesn't want to lose control of the world. So in order to make sure that we stop all foreign enemies and terrorists, we first have to make sure that our domestic population is under control. And this starts with the intelligence agencies. So when they want to target someone, oftentimes they do it because the people they're targeting are insiders and they know what's going on. I think that's what's happened to me and Barbara and you and some of the other people like Karen Stewart. And one other thing you had mentioned previously about open records, let me just say, I've had some experience with open records. There's federal open records laws and there's state freedom of open records law.
Right.
The federal law is the Freedom of Information. It's called FOIA,
Right.
Freedom of Information Act. The local state laws usually have to do with what's called open records acts. Now, these people ignore the law when they want to. And you had asked me once before, how can they just, what about these open records laws? Are they any good? No. I've had several instances where they completely denied me. And one has to do with that postal inspector coming out from a home to threaten me.
Mm-hmm.
But they denied me the records, almost all the records, all the pertinent records. How do they do it? Well, they cite various statutes, that federal and state statutes that give exemptions to the police or any other agency that wants to refuse. Am I talking too fast here?
Oh, no, exemptions. That's exactly right. I was just saying, yes, absolutely. I've gotten those letters from the FBI and the CIA citing exemptions, refusing to give information.
What they do, here's basically the main exemptions have to do with confidential sources of information that are provided to these evil groups, the FBI and the DEA and all these other groups. They're providing information. The source, the name of the individual is never released. That's federal and state law. They won't release the source. They want to protect the source. And so another one that they use is it's a continuing investigation. Bear in mind here that the U.S. Postal Inspector, Nipfing, and his little sidekick, Conrad Rodriguez of Texas DPS, these guys came into my home and threatened me and my wife. And then later, when I tried to get a copy of their phony report, they wouldn't let me have it. Of course, they didn't want me to have it because it was a fraud. Everything they did was a lie. And they knew when they came here that we were not involved in any kind of postal crime, that Senator Cornyn cooperated with the FBI just to set me up for an investigation.
Yes.
Imagine a United States senator who was supposed to respond to me and maybe assist me in stopping the torture of me and my wife. Instead, he didn't answer my letters at all. He put my name as a suspect of a crime committed in his office because he wanted to retaliate against me for complaining. So this is another point. Anyone who complains by letter or email to the United States Congress, including senators and representatives, be careful because they might list you as a terrorist. And I think that's what they did. They were trying to shut me up. And that's why these guys came on so strong against me.
Well, this is what I mean. This is the kind of fraud that's being carried out openly by these agencies. Writing to a senator should be precisely the kind of thing that any civic-minded citizen should be able to do at any time, right? Being able to express your views and make suggestions and ask questions and deliver complaints. Most definitely, that should be a part of any kind of functional democracy. But, I've also had the exact same experience of writing to senators about these chemtrails and aerosols, and then finding that I'm the subject of being targeted and being uber surveilled shortly after. So, the thing that you are bringing to the table over here, Gerald, is that the FBI and the other people, the other agencies that are doing the targeting, know perfectly well that you are absolutely innocent. They know perfectly well that you are not a terrorist. They know perfectly well there's no reason to surveil you or investigate you. So literally what they are doing is they are running a massive fraudulent scheme over here. And is there money associated with it? Is this a lucrative thing for the feds to do?
That's right, exactly right. And there's so many sad things that are hitting us here in this country. And you had mentioned something earlier about freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is being shut down. The FBI is actually shutting down these indemedias all over the world. I'm being banned from indemedias everywhere. I'm being locked out of a group called Discuss. Now, when they do this, they're indirectly, or in some cases directly, ignoring the First Amendment, the right to freedom of speech, freedom to express your concerns. And then now they're trying to take the weapons away from the people, a violation of the Second Amendment. Now, no one likes to see a mass shooting. That's true. Anyone who goes crazy and goes out. But let me tell you, the FBI encourages mass shootings. We've seen it in Myron May, in Aaron Alexis, and then the FBI got online and said, oh, Geral-Sosbee is a combat veteran from Vietnam, therefore he is a murderer. Now imagine what I felt when I read that. And then they said be careful because Geral-Sosbee might decide to go in and shoot up a school. Now, all this is documented on my website, Ramola. Imagine these crazy and FBI. Now, when they do this, they expect their target to go crazy. That's what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah.
They expected something from me, and then while this is all going on, Ramola, they're torturing me with the directed energy weaponry and ELF, and they're sending thugs out to tear up my car, to confront me and want to fight, sometimes knocking me off my feet. All this is going on because they need an act of violence from me, which they're not going to get. But this is what the very important point. Go ahead.
Yes, you know, what I was thinking as you were speaking was what they're really doing is they're engaging in psychological warfare. You know, and we talked a little bit last time about how we're literally living in a war zone, and some people don't know it, but other people do. And what we're right in the middle of is a psychological war zone. You know, this is they're running psyops on those whom they target, and they're getting people around them to run psyops on the target, just to, as you say, have them either be driven mad, be driven insane by the lunacy that's been going on all around them, or present as insane by simply speaking about it, by speaking about being stalked, by speaking about being color-coded, by speaking about people echoing things that they're saying, you know, by sort of presenting the kind of face of paranoia, which is then diagnosed by, you know, an obliging doctor or psychiatrist who comes along and, you know, helps America's red terror over here by giving a misdiagnosis or false diagnosis, and propels the unfortunately victimized target by re-victimizing the target and, you know, sending the target into a psych ward. So that's one form of incarceration they've got prepared. And the other kind is what you are also reporting is the entrapment. You know, provoking, extreme provocation, to the point where they expect the target to lash out in a blind fury, and then along will come law enforcement and, you know, arrest you and take you off to a jail cell, right?
Yes, and you and I were speaking last time about one of the targets, David Atkins. They wanted this guy. He's probably a very nice guy and a peaceful man, and he was videotaping these two FBI thugs who were trying to provoke him. Now, it's very clear to me when I see that video, and incidentally, as I mentioned before, these two guys were attempting to murder him by forcing him into a final exit. They're furthering the interests of the FBI when they do that, and they should be charged. Those two guys should be charged with attempted murder or as accessories, or at the very least with what's called threat by intimidation. There's all kinds of laws that can address this kind of chicanery by these FBI operatives. But
interesting.
The authorities are not. They're not interested in it. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's interesting, Gerald. So you're suggesting that there is some possibility there for people to actually, you know, kind of solicit the law and solicit the court system and the justice system to get some justice over here when people are being tormented and persecuted like this by the FBI and by local police and by the fusion centers. You know, if there is a way for people to you know, to get into the court system and sue them, I think a lot of people would be interested. So if you had any advice in that direction, I think people would be interested in hearing it.
Well, I don't, and incidentally, I don't offer any legal advice to anyone. I'm not an expert on these things. I'm just sharing my personal.
Oh, right. I didn't mean in that sense. Yeah.
And it's my personal observations are a little bit influenced by my understanding of the law, but I don't want to hold out hope or methods to deal with it. Here's one thing.
Okay.
Recently, over the past few years, I have tried to prosecute several thugs who come at me. One, I was successful. Alonzo Yanis assaulted me with a Class C misdemeanor assault, Class C, and I finally, after the police refused to take my report repeatedly, I finally found a police agency who would take my report, and we put him in court, and he admitted to it. He pled no contest. I didn't get to go to the court because the FBI stole my mail again to prevent me from showing up. They took the summons out of my mailbox.
I see.
So then other instances, the district attorney refuses to prosecute cases. The city attorney refuses. I had dealings with these people, and the attorney general won't even answer my letters anymore. You have to go through the Attorney General. I'm talking about the state Attorney General, not the U.S. Attorney.
Okay.
But the state Attorney General is needed sometime to remind the local police and the city council and so forth that they have to honor the Open Records Act. Well, the Attorney General doesn't even answer my letters or my phone calls. So you can see that these people have they've got a brick wall when it comes to opening the records up to a targeted individual. Mm-hmm. And it's just a horrible situation that the FBI has created. Mm-hmm. In fact, I was so frustrated, I at one time I filed a complaint with the state bar alleging that one of these officials is obstructing justice because I had overwhelming proof, including the admission from the criminal himself, that he committed the crime.
Mm-hmm. So would you see that all of this really points, would you say that all of this really points to a kind of takeover of the criminal justice system by these agencies?
Yes, and look, remember that there's, the criminal justice system, let me mention, this is very important that you touched on there. The criminal justice system is a horrible way to imprison and kill innocent people. Oftentimes they're set up by these phony stings and entrapments, not completely dissimilar to the kinds of entrapment that they're putting on targets in a civil manner. But the criminal justice system is rotten, and they've got a lot of power under that criminal justice system to launch all kinds of phony investigations against people. You know, that's what Nipfing was trying to do to me when he came out to my home to threaten me and my wife. However, that's not the end of the story. The FBI has created what I call a new unheralded or secret quasi-criminal justice system. That report is found on my academia.edu. Anyone can read it, but it'll show, if someone will read it carefully, that the FBI cleverly has devised a new civil criminal justice system, is what I would call it. This is completely outrageous that the FBI gets away with this, and it's this new secret criminal justice system that I think is tied into the secret federal court orders from these federal magistrates, because they're overlapped. They're all, and in my paper on that subject at Academia, I touch on some of these things. So we have a horrible problem here now with the FBI in complete control of anyone they want to entrap or trick or provoke, that they can get them in trouble very easily with one of these two systems, the one that's popularly known as the criminal justice system and the other one that I just described. Go ahead, please.
And, and I think in the last conversation we had, you'd also mentioned how they're constantly trying to profile the target. So literally through this process of parallel construction that they've set up for themselves, first they accuse people of crimes that they make up, that they fabricate utterly, that they put down on paper, and then they go get the federal magistrate judge to sign something and say this is a court-authorized order. And now based on this, we're going to tell everybody that this person is under federal investigation, etc. They do that, and then they rush around trying hard to frame and profile the target and, entrap and harass and provoke the target into doing something, which will then feed into the story that they have already fabricated, right? So
that's correct. This business of profiling is the biggest fraud ever put over on Americans ever that I can imagine. These guys like Conrad Rodriguez and these FBI profilers, they go to these little schools where a psychologist or a psychiatrist will come in and tell them the various characteristics of a person who might engage in some type of criminal activity, such as kidnapping or robbery or explosives or that sort of thing. Well, then the FBI goes out with their buddies, and they start fabricating stuff to make sure that this suspect or target fits into the profile that was given to them by these academics in psychology who are paid by the FBI to invent this stuff. These profilers are just big hypocrites and frauds. I've never seen anything like it. It's the dirtiest business, in my estimation, that they use this against people, Ramola, and they entrap them, they stitch them up. They put my name at the scene of a crime because I had sent an email, I think, to Senator Cornyn about being harassed and terrorized. Well, someone decided to profile me. So they decided that maybe I'm a threat. So, during the interview, I may have mentioned this before, and excuse me if I did, Conrad Rodriguez, the Texas DPS guy, said, "Are you angry with the FBI?" Well, if you admit to being angry, right there, you're going to be profiled as a violent person.
Oh, right,
so I said,
right,
no,
yeah.
I said, no, I'm just frustrated that no one will investigate the felonies being committed against me. Then he said, "Are you doing your work online for the benefit of humanity?" Well, Ramola, that's another red flag. If you say, "Oh yes, I'm trying to serve mankind," well, don't say that to these lunatics, because then they'll record that you fit the profile of a crazy person who thinks he's a megalomaniac, who thinks he's a god. So you can't make those kinds of statements.
You can't win with these people, and yeah, you can't win, Gerald. I'm sorry. I think the key word over there that you said is lunatics. These people are lunatic, the FBI. These guys are mad. They're insane. And as you say, they're going and hiring university professors. They're hiring people with training in psychiatry and psychology, but then getting them to sort of set out a profile that they can then fit people into, right? And then they harass and provoke people, and then they elicit, right? They get people to confess that, yes, they're angry at the FBI. Now, why should it be, a crime to say you're angry at the FBI or you're angry at the police when they do horrific things and they do fraudulent things and they do ghastly things as they're currently doing? I think the proper and sane response should be for everybody to be angry at the state of affairs in the country, to be angry at the kind of secrecy that permits this kind of a state of affairs to, persist in the country. So it would seem to be completely normal by any normal psychological standards. But, they have decided to attach language. If you confess that you're angry, then the very fact that you use that word, "I'm angry" or "I'm enraged," etc., which no doubt I certainly have used many times, is immediately taken and you're put into their little profile, their little wrongful category. Oh, this person is angry. The next thing you know, they're going to show up at the FBI headquarters with a gun. This is the story they've got going. And it's so idiotic.
That's right. That's exactly correct. One other thing before I forget it, bear in mind that when these two aggressive high-level cops came out to our home and knocked on the door, and the first thing I said to him is, I said, "No, thank you, sir, we're not in." I thought he was trying to sell brooms or something, I said, "We're not interested." And he said, "No, we're not here for that." He said, he pulled out his credentials and said, "We're not here for that, Mr. Sosbee, we need to talk with you." I was shocked. He showed me U.S. Postal Inspector. I thought, "Oh, come in, come right on in." Because normally it's not a good idea to talk to a cop when he's there to hurt you. But since I knew that what I wanted to find out what he was up to. So I had, in order to do that, I had to let him come in. Here's the thing. He wanted to know where I was during the past, if I was ever in Dallas during the past 10 years, I think he said. Well,
that's a long time.
I wanted to laugh in his face because the FBI has had me under constant physical and electronic surveillance for 30 years, 24/7 globally.
Right.
So for them to come there and ask me that question, it was very clear to me that these two guys didn't know, the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. This was a setup. The FBI knew I had nothing to do with any kind of a crime committed in Senator Cornyn's office. And yet they sent these two guys out here to start profiling me and threatening me. Basically, they were trying to shut me down so I don't do any more writing online.
Absolutely.
I'm glad I got to mention that to you, because it was a farce for these two guys to come in there and ask me if I've been in Dallas in the past 10 years.
Absolutely, because you would expect that they would know exactly where you had been and what you'd been doing for every minute of your life for the past 10 years.
Well, yeah, they're on me physically and electronically 24/7 for decades. What the heck is going on here? And how has our government become so corrupt? If they'll do these things to a person who served at risk of life, to defend this sorry nation. You see what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. And as you know, they've targeted so many people. They've targeted whistleblowers like you, from the agencies, from the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, like Karen Stewart, etc. And then they just target random people. They target anybody who's kind of, suggested to them as a possible putative potential target that they can exploit. Because literally, this sounds to me like a big exploitation racket, right? It's a racket.
Yeah, that's right. It's mind-boggling. You and I touched on this before. It appears to me that the FBI is growing by leaps and bounds in terms of the money it receives from Congress and other sources. They actually receive all kinds of funding from different agencies, based on my understanding. And how are they able to do all these things? Well, because they keep expanding. They keep saying that, as one author said, they exaggerate the numbers and they exaggerate the dangerousness and increase the numbers. That's what he said. They increase the numbers of criminals and they magnify the dangerousness. Now, when you do that, everybody gets frightened and they get more money and they have more targets. So they prosecute and persecute more people, and they do all this in the name of public safety. Imagine that. So I think that's
Imagine the
important.
public. That's a very important point to make, Gerald. Imagine the public needing to be kept safe from somebody like me or somebody like you. I mean, look at the great hazards that we present to the public safety.
Yes, and the great irony, you hit on a good point there, as you usually do, Ramola. The great irony is that the nicest, most sensitive and caring and trusting people that I've ever known have been targeted.
Yes, absolutely.
And the most evil, violent, and angry and hateful people have been cops and FBI, almost all the time. There's some exceptions, but that's the great irony here going on. The government is killing off the best people. That's what it looks like to me.
Yes, and that's actually a very important point, Cheryl, and perhaps we should just dwell on that for a moment. The people who are being targeted are actually astonishingly wonderful people. I have met such wonderful people through just having been targeted and having, gone on the internet and trying to find out what's going on and connecting with others who are targeted and who are, experiencing the same kind of horrors around the country and literally around the world. I found, as I think you have also found, people of high accomplishment, high intelligence, and high emotional intelligence, great empathy and sympathy and warmth and cordiality and real niceness. I mean, both men and women. And great communicative and articulative powers, people who are usually human rights advocates in some form or the other, and who have all become human rights advocates now, right?
Yes, and that's a very important point. Related to that is this concept that the judges, I'm really extremely disappointed at the judiciary. Obviously, you can tell that, I think.
Yes.
Here they are pretending to honor the law, and yet they're subverting it every time the FBI comes in with an ex parte meeting or gets a civil court order against an innocent person. They're actually showing their, as I said earlier, contempt. The judges are in contempt of the laws they're supposed to honor. Now, here's the point. If a computer were wired up and programmed so that it honored the Constitution and all the laws that are afforded under the Bill of Rights and all the theories of the Declaration of Independence, all the things that we honor as Americans, but they're not honored by the government. If a computer were programmed, Ramola, to do that, we wouldn't need these damn judges. In fact, we'd probably get a lot more justice just from a simple computer printout because it would follow the law. It would say, no, you can't do this, cops. You can't go out there and threaten this person. You can't set him up for torture using deep space-based weaponry. I mean, the computer would go fits with that kind of stuff, and the computer would cite 100 laws why any particular act shouldn't be allowed. And one other thing before I forget it. You had mentioned target. We talked about this before. Why are they targeting people? Well, there's 100,000 different reasons to target someone, but basically they need to target people. That's what they do. This is their job. They get paid for it, just like these little thugs that are following me around to try to provoke me. This is their work. They get paid for that. But here's the thing. I came in, I was born in 45, as I said.
Mm-hmm.
J. Edgar Hoover hired me. J. Edgar Hoover was the director of the FBI from the beginning.
Yeah.
1935, he was the director in 1935. I was born 10 years later, but he was also the director of the group that preceded the FBI. It was called the Bureau of Investigation. That was in 1925. Now, Hoover was the director of the FBI for 50 years, 50.
Wow.
Now, here's the kicker. Everyone doesn't know this, but a lot of us do.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Hoover, and may he rest in peace, but he was really a bad guy. He had a thing against anyone who had an unusual sexual appetite. For example, he made very clear that no agent should be a womanizer. If you're an FBI agent and you're out chasing around after women, and it's not just heterosexual, it applies across the board.
Mm-hmm.
If we find that you're too aggressive,
mm-hmm.
you're fired. That's what that was his rule. But here's the thing: Mr. Hoover himself had some pretty strange.
Yes, I think I remember.
So in other words, if someone else were the director and not Hoover, and they were honoring Hoover's rules, Hoover would be fired and locked up in a mental institution. You see what I mean?
Yeah. So he was sort of speaking out of both sides of his mouth there. He was, telling people to do one thing and doing another himself.
So they're using these so-called sexual aggressiveness traits in some instances, I think, to target people and to profile them. Now, when they do that,
mm-hmm.
Every human being is a sexual creature.
Yes.
What the heck?
Mm-hmm.
What are you trying to do to our people? You want to tell us when we can look at a woman, or when a woman can look at a man or a woman? That's none of your business, but that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and as you know, Gerald, we spoke a little bit earlier about these weapons as well, which are sexual stimulation weapons and sexual assault weapons as well.
Yeah, good point.
And they're doing this. They're freely assaulting women in public. They're freely assaulting men in public and in private. They're assaulting men and women in their private parts. And, literally people who are reporting this are actually reporting that a kind of a gratuitous, voyeuristic kind of torture associated, where these weapons are simply used very glibly on them at all times, very facilely, very easily on them at all times.
Yeah, it's really scary. I mentioned to you, I think on one of our phone calls, I think they were hitting me with that technology where they would stimulate me.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would send, when I would go out somewhere, they would send women up to me to make overtures. Now, I immediately caught something was, I didn't know I was being stimulated electronically.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I could see that why would these women? I'm not such a handsome guy. Why would these women come up to me like that and make these overtures? And well, they wanted to see if they could get me in some type of solicitation. I guess I don't know.
Right. Well, it
reason.
Certainly sounds like it, Gerald. It sounds like deliberate entrapment. And you see, that's the power and the insidiousness of these ghastly weapons, because they can get away with it. They're operating these weapons in secret, and they do have the propensity and the quality of stimulating the human body. So they can get away with it in secret. And through walls, they can stimulate people's bodies.
Yes, and one more item before I forget it. They recently, a month ago or so, I was walking into a Target store,
mm-hmm.
and the FBI sends a female up to my left and behind me. She had to hurry to catch up with me. And when I first saw her, I thought she looked like she was in her 20s. Well, when we got inside the Target store,
mm-hmm.
She turned and said something to me. Well, guess what? This little woman who had her no bra, she had a silk blouse that was open about halfway down to the stomach, and she was well developed. She was about 15 or 16 years old. Now that's a minor.
Oh my goodness.
Now, she looked like a woman until you looked at her up close with her. She had makeup, but I could tell that she was a young girl. She was 14, 15, or 16, and she was I don't know what she was trying to do to me, but it was very clear that she was trying to get my attention. But now that would be illegal for the FBI to
Yes.
use a minor like that.
Oh, yes, but
But that's
isn't
what
that
they do.
precisely what they do? They're trying to entrap you into showing some interest in a minor just so that they can frame you as somebody who's pursuing minors. Trust me, they do this kind of thing around me as well. They do it even with children around
Yeah.
me. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these guys, as I said before, they don't stop at anything. They'll pull out all the stoppers. They'll do anything they can. There's no law. There's no ethics in the FBI or in the police department. The same thing.
Right. So given the situation, go ahead.
And I wouldn't. Just one quick thing, because I referenced the police. The police are trained, all of them, directly or indirectly, by the FBI at the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia. I know for a fact, because I've been through that academy several times, that I won't comment any further. But these guys are out killing our people on the street, and then they get off. Usually there's no prosecution. It's very rare to see a prosecution. And incidentally, there was a woman named Vicki Weaver. She was shot dead by an FBI sniper. She was completely innocent at the Ruby Ridge incident in 1992, I think it was.
Yeah, the woman with the
they
baby.
Shot her dead,
Yeah.
and the FBI agent who killed her was a sniper. And in the end, a federal judge dismissed the complaint against that FBI murderer. Now, this is an example of how the federal judges protect the FBI from prosecution for their high crimes and treason. I wanted to get that in. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead with what you were saying.
That's a very important point that you brought up, that issue of collusion between the judges and the FBI. The question that actually comes to my mind when I look at this, and today actually I signed a petition that was going around on Twitter from some NGO called the Institute for Criminal Justice Reform. And the board, the chairman of the board of directors over there is a former police officer. And one of the things that he says in his petition, which is on change.org, anyone can go and sign it, and I recommend that everybody does. What he had written over there was, the police are trained to be scared, and we need to give the police new kinds of training in order to stop them being scared. They're taught to be scared of people on the street, and this is why they go and kill people like Stephon Walker, in his own backyard. And all of the very many other young men and women that they simply shoot at and put, thousands of bullets into. There's a rain of bullets, with which they kill these people. Anybody that they decide is, their target of the evening or the morning or whatever, right? So this particular organization is talking about police training. We need police retraining. We need to retrain our police. We need to teach them not to be scared. Why would you start with the assumption that somebody's going to kill you and you've got to pull out your gun and start shooting? But that appears to be what they are kind of going on. So
well, yes, that's right. Look, I have some pretty strange views on this, but let me just mention one of them. I believe that it's impossible to save the criminal justice system and to retrain the cops. What has to happen is a complete revolution in terms of peaceful revolution, in terms of how we're going to manage society and control people who are violent or who are engaged in rape and murder and robbery. There's another way to do it. They don't have to use guns to kill people. They've got all kinds of ways to take a man down. I saw him beating a heavy-set black man one time on TV. They killed him. They were strangling him. He couldn't breathe. He was a big guy.
Oh, yes, Eric Garner.
They were afraid that he might just beat the hell out of them if he got up off the ground, but so they killed him right there. Yeah. Here's the thing. I wrote a short paper on academia. It's called A New Perspective, Let My People Go. Now, I know that's people have heard that before, let my people go. Well, yes, that's the kind of terminology that has been used throughout history to address government corruption and crimes against the people. It was used during the times of the Roman Empire. It was used probably by Martin Luther King and his associates. But in that report, in that paper, and I won't keep talking about it because most people don't want to read it because it's too avant-garde. But in that paper, I show that we don't need cops out there with guns.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need prisons even to put people in.
Oh.
There's a whole new way to deal with social difficulties and human emotional problems and financial. And the other thing here is the complex economic system that the United States has achieved, through which the United States has achieved its great power over the world and in outer space. This same system that brought us all these powers and riches, it's the same system that tortures and kills and makes homeless countless millions of people. We have over 2 million in prison right now here, and many of them just can't find a job that, you know, in order to succeed in life, one needs to have work. He has to have a family or a home of some kind, even if he's the only one there. And he has to do what's called self-actualization. That means basically know who he is and accept who he is as a wonderful creature of God, that he's here, he has a right to be here, and he enjoys living, and he doesn't want to hurt other people. Self-actualization is something that's sorely lacking, and the government the government doesn't want people to self-actualize and be happy. So I think this whole problem of putting people in prison and torturing and put them in mental institutions, some of it is the result of a complex economic system that most of us don't understand from the time we're young. That's my feeling on that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that is so eloquently and brilliantly put, Gerald. I have to say that is a brilliant vision of a world and a society and a community in which, you know, I'll tell you, a lot of women in particular, but I know a lot of men as well, you know, would welcome no guns, police not having guns, and nobody else having guns either. You know, why should we have this threat of killing each other with carrying guns? We don't need it. And do we need prisons? Do we need to incarcerate each other? And, you know, as for rapists and murderers and so forth, I'll tell you what, right now at this point in time with these weapons, you know, you have to question if people who are now rapists and murderers and criminals are doing, you know, are literally acting out of their own volition or their own nature or nurture or environment or whatever, or if they are being brain frequencied into doing these kinds of things, you know, because these weapons can do that, right?
Excellent point, Ramola. I wrote in one of my posts that on that topic that you just mentioned, that people who are being tortured, who are being programmed to engage in activity that the FBI is setting them up for, they lose their free will. They do. A man or a woman can lose his free will when he's being tortured. I don't think there can be any doubt to that. If someone is cutting you in little pieces, and you're supposed to love them, you know, you don't have the free will to love them anymore. It's taken away from you. Now, Jesus might, you know, that's true. Jesus might love. They were torturing him and cutting him up, and he still loved people. I don't know how he could do it, but apparently he did. But this idea of entrapment and provoking people, causing them to lose their free will, programming them so that they're no longer self-autonomous, they're no longer who they were born to be. That is a great travesty. And putting a person in prison, imagine being locked in a cage, which is where they want to put me, or in a padded cell in a hospital. You know, what kind of creatures would do that to someone? Only a psychopath would take delight.
Yeah, it doesn't even sound human. It's not humane to want to do that, you know. So what the FBI is doing, what the CIA is doing, what the NSA is doing, what all of these intelligence agencies that are running these programs are doing are truly barbaric, truly inhumane. And the use of these weapons, I would contend, is also inhumane. And, you know, on that note, when you were talking about the free will of a person being taken away through torture, there's also the issue of the induction of emotion through this brain frequency weapon use, you know, because they send the right frequencies for anger, they send the right frequencies for extreme pain, and therefore they can totally neurotech a person into a state of, as you say, discombobulation, being moved away from the person that one really is, and being forced to experience flashes of different emotions, you know, from the outside, whether it's depression or anger or intensity of some other kind, etc. So it's a total manipulation of a person, both bodily, physically, as well as, you know, mentally and psychologically.
Yes, thank you, Ramola. As usual, you really get to the point, the central issue. That kind of technology, we don't even know how to begin to address it. Who knows who are the experts? Well, the people who are using it against us are the only ones who know. So they need to come forward and admit to the people, here's what we've been doing. Here's the technology by which we control the human brain, and we can make people into whatever we want them to be. We can turn them into mass murderers like Myron May and Aaron Alexis and other people, or we can turn them into maniacs, and we've had a few of those. So yes, that's a whole new realm that needs to be studied by people who are knowledgeable. But again, who's knowledgeable? Just the psychopaths who are using it. One more quick point here before I forget it. Let me thank you for letting me jump around all over the map here.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we're having what might be considered a stream of consciousness conversation where we're able to jump and leap around and cover different subjects as they come up during the conversation. And incidentally, language itself that you and I are exploring is a vehicle for thought.
Yes.
As we're speaking, as we're thinking, we're able to come up on new ideas that maybe we wouldn't have come up with if we hadn't been talking together.
Correct.
So I just want to add that Senator John Cornyn is not the only representative in Washington who has proven himself to be a thug. Not at all. Yeah. There's another one that I need to point out. His name is Pete Sessions.
Oh, just one more? I thought there were done.
Yeah, there's several more, but these two stand out.
Okay.
The father of Pete Sessions was the director of the FBI. I think he was the director back in like the year 2000 or no, like 1990. He was fired for unethical conduct. Now, here's the thing. I lived in Dallas, which is where Pete Sessions' office is located. I went, and this is after the FBI hijacked my life in El Paso. I moved to Dallas. So I went into Pete Sessions' office and I pleaded with them to please contact the FBI and tell them to stop terrorizing me and destroying my life. And here's what the secretary said to me after she spoke with Sessions. She said, well, Mr. Sosbee, we're having a town hall meeting. Why don't you come into the meeting and stand up and tell everybody that you're being followed and harassed by the FBI. Now, those were basically her words, Ramola.
Interesting.
Now, imagine someone going into a town meeting in the district where Sessions is I think he's a Republican. Anyway, and making that kind of announcement, people would immediately, they'll probably, first of all, there'd be an FBI heckler, people would immediately say, oh, you must be a criminal if the FBI is after you. Well, that's the way that she wanted me to appear.
Yes.
This guy Simpkins, he is a close buddy of the FBI. Incidentally, so was Cornyn. He wanted to be director of the FBI earlier. I mentioned that to you.
Right.
But for Sessions, he never did anything. He never even talked to me. He let his secretary insult me. So this is the kind of thing that we've got in Congress. These people in Congress could care less. They're making lots of money.
Yeah.
They're making insider trades. They're comfortable. They live like kings and queens. Feinstein is another example of a corrupt senator. And again, all of these things that I'm trying to share with you and with the public are things that I've learned after I left the FBI. So in other words, I'm not revealing any secrets. I don't have any great secrets to reveal.
Right.
But except what I learned as a victim and target of these psychopaths who run the country. And the country is being run by a bunch of violent psychopaths as far as I can see. And then that's not meant as an overstatement or exaggeration. You and I and a lot of other targets can confirm that. Go ahead, please.
Absolutely. And it sounds like what you have actually laid bare for us today, especially in this conversation, Gerald, is that you're kind of showing the network here between these judges, the magistrate judges, the FBI, and Mengele, actually, going back to, the paperclip scientists and everything that they brought to this country, right? And what they imparted reported to the CIA most definitely, and I guess also the FBI, right? Which I would like to ask you a few more questions about actually. But you're also bringing to the fore the connection here with Congress. So, you mentioned insider trading. So are you suggesting that Congress has something to gain by kind of letting the FBI go scot-free in this fashion and become this sort of run-amok, lunatic, psychopathic organization that's totally not focused on criminal justice, but is rather focused on, establishing their own criminality, their self-serving criminality?
Yeah. Did you ask me a question there?
Yeah, sorry. Kind of lost in my long rambling. Didn't mean to do that. Congress.
First of all, look, the FBI has the power to destroy anyone. There's an implied blanket of blackmail hanging over everyone in government, especially Congress, and of course the courts. So in other words, Congress, plus the FBI has all the intelligence data with the CIA to protect the members of Congress from, violent attacks or whatever. So the congressmen and women need to be in good graces with the FBI. They don't want the FBI leaking any sensitive data or personal information about them before an election. They'd lose the election.
Interesting.
We can see that right now in the Hillary Clinton fiasco,
yes,
where the FBI was releasing selective information both on Hillary and I think a little bit on Trump. But the FBI is notorious for doing that. But the Congress, look, they're happy. They're making a lot of money. Why would they want to upset the apple cart? That's the way they look at it.
Right, right. So I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me the whole blackmail thing, the control file thing. You're right. That actually traces back to the FBI. They're the guys who have the information on the Congress people, right? And they're the ones who kind of hold the reins and so keep them in check and so forth. And so literally Congress is run by the FBI, and Congress isn't really working for the people, as I think many of us have already figured out, right? So.
Yeah. A few years ago, I remember a senator, or I think it was a senator. He had passed away. I don't remember his name, but he was a prominent senator. And after he was dead for a few years, the FBI released information showing that he had affairs with 2 or 3 women and had children with different women that no one ever knew about. Now, that's fine. I'm not criticizing. May he rest in peace. But this is an example. The FBI knew that while the man was running for office. They knew all about his past background, and none of that was released. And this is the kind of thing that if you have a congressman who has an affair with one of his in-office girls, or boys, that's not going to be released. But the FBI knows about it because the FBI is in the business of gathering intelligence, and intelligence is power. Intelligence is the most powerful weapon that this government uses against other governments and against people, to blackmail people, to force them into compliance with whatever the FBI wants, and to keep them faithful to the FBI. And yet the FBI is a bunch of traitors. Even Trump can see that. Even Trump recognizes that the FBI is run by traitors. And incidentally, one final point here before I forget it. When Trump said that the director of the FBI, Comey, is a traitor, and so is McCabe, he is so correct. But it's not just the top brass. Trump probably didn't want to make a statement that the entire FBI, it's not just the leadership that's traitors, the leadership filters down all the way to the street agent or the guy pounding the pavement, which they don't do much of because they're too busy spying on people with electronic surveillance. But anyway, the entire organization of the FBI has to be removed from the face of the earth, and do it in a manner that also allows us to create a new way, a new humane way, where we try to get rid of the criminal justice system and deal with people as humans, not as animals, not as wild creatures that we lock up and torture and murder. Anyway, that's just my editorial.
Oh, that's a brilliant vision. I thank you for sharing that. That is absolutely, what I certainly agree with. We don't need to treat people like animals, and we certainly want to treat humans as humans. Those of us who believe in each other and believe in the possibility of a harmonious society, which apparently the FBI and law enforcement in this country doesn't believe, because they're training each other to be scared of the people and, use guns and so forth and so on. So it's highly regrettable. And I think the picture that's that's emerging here is of a very corrupt organization, as a highly corrupt organization. One of the questions that I had really remaining was about, you mentioned Mengele, and which made me think of the paperclip scientists and how they worked with the CIA and so forth. And, I was talking with Dr. Karlstrom really yesterday about the mind control projects and how a lot of the scientists that came over, thousands of the scientists that came over from Germany, were working on mind control projects, and trauma-based mind control is what we're talking about. And so we know about, the MK Ultra situation and the CIA working on that and continuing to work on that. Do you see the FBI also as being infiltrated in that way?
The FBI being what?
Infiltrated in that way, with that kind of focus on mind control and trauma-based mind control and thinking in those terms.
Oh, sure, yeah. In fact, I think I may have mentioned this. The FBI creates violence. They expect it. They make sure that the person is not, if they're not looking for violence, they're looking for someone who's going to steal money. They give them a chance to deal drugs or deal. So yes, they plant these ideas through their informants, through their operatives. They probably have other ways, as you and I have you touched on, that they can influence the thinking of a person by electronic programming. But yes, they certainly do want to program people. And I wrote a short paper called the Future Crime Project. That's at academia also. Now, I didn't go into a great depth on that paper, but it'll give you an idea of what these idiots at the FBI are doing in terms of identifying criminals before they're criminals. It's called the Future Crime Project, and it's on that academia page. But thank you. That's an excellent point, Ramola. And someone needs to come on with you and who's knowledgeable and how they can program people. And that would be an interesting podcast.
Absolutely, and I think I'll look into that. Thank you so much for mentioning that paper. I'll put all the links below to all the papers that you have mentioned. And Gerald, I should remind you of the time. It's been about an hour since we started, so we should probably bring this session to an end. It's been a very interesting and productive conversation. What are your impressions, and do you have any last words that you'd like to leave people with?
Well, I just want to say you're great, and I'm not trying to flatter you. You're the only one that aside from my wonderful friend Barbara Hartwell, you're the only one that I see in the world is doing such hard work and pulling things together to present it for the people to understand what has happened to our planet here, being run by a bunch of psychopaths, and not just the FBI psychopaths. They have their friends in the UK, the MI5 and MI6, and in Germany, the SS. It's not called SS today, but it's the sequel to SS.
The BND.
All of these countries.
Yeah.
All of these countries are engaged in the same inhumane activity against human beings. But no, that's all I had, and thank you again. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I hope that our listeners will stay tuned to your next podcast, which will certainly be as interesting as our past ones.
I hope so. And I thank you so much, Gerald, for coming forward. And thank you for all of those nice words. And I should probably correct you a little bit. There are other people doing a lot of hard work out there. There are some good journalists out there who are really working very, very hard, and I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that the world will change. But, we do have a lot of struggle that we're swimming around in, it seems like, trying to expose this corruption and educate people and make people aware that these agencies that have these big names and that are running these huge surveillance fraudulent schemes on all our communities, we kind of need to educate people, continue to educate people about the realities of what is going on. So and I thank you therefore for helping in that enterprise and helping inform and educate people. And we'll have another conversation soon.
Okay, thank you, Ramola, and bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.